Good morning, workers. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northern Nevada, where it is our mission to grow together in love, faith, justice, and joy. We here at UUFNN are growing, not just in numbers, but in our faith that by being and working together, we can bring about justice and build a compassionate community. It is a joy to see each of you, even if virtually, this Sunday, as we connect on Zoom for a time of reflection and introspection. We welcome all to be part of us, regardless of racial identity, ethnic background, age, economic circumstances, educational achievement, judicial history, immigration status, sexual orientation, or gender identity. UUFNN is about compassion and support, not judgment. I'm Glenn Miller. Personal pronouns, he, him, his. Personal passions, climate change, social justice. It is my pleasure to serve as your worshiper. One Bob for our Labor Day service of songs, strikes, and spirit. We here at UUFN love having new people. And if that's you, feel free to contact our office or our website for more information. You can also click on the link in the chat box to fill out the newcomer form and sign up for our newsletter that will keep you informed of all the activities in our meeting here at UUFN. Since we're meeting on Zoom today, you can update your on-screen name, which helps everyone know who you are. Note that there will remain muted during the service, but you can use the chat box for comments, primarily during the prayer and meditation sessions. As a courtesy, please refrain from posting announcements while folks are presenting. Following the service, I invite you to join us for coffee time, where we will break into small groups to visit virtually, face to face. Thank you for being with us this morning. May all the rest of the world unite.
Good morning. As we recognize the week where there's no water, no electricity, no safe space, we also honor those who suffer and who need help. We honor the emergency workers, the firefighters, and ordinary citizens who stepped in to assist and to support. May Maester's words speak to us on this Labor Day as we grapple with our changing world and work. We enter this meeting house for kindness and comfort. May rough, worn hands and aching backs be healed. We enter this meeting house of hope for equality. May those who labor to survive live to know justice. we enter this meeting house of love and vocation. May our bonds of solidarity be strengthened. Would you please gather your candle or light for the chalice lighting? Bill Miller will light the chalice in the great room. May we reflect on the words of Dorothy Day. People say, what is the sense of our small effort? They cannot see that we must lay one brick at a time, take one step at a time. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples that spread. Is like that. No one has a right to sit down and feel hopeless. There's too much work to do.
Well, some people say a man is made out of mud. Poor man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood, skin and bones. A mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and a deeper in debt. Say, Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. Well, one morning when the sun didn't shine, picked up my shovel and I walked to the mine. I loaded 16 tons, number 9 coal. The straw boss said, well, damn your soul. I loaded 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. Say, Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. Well, if you hear me coming, you better step aside. A lot of men did and a lot of men died. One fist is here, the other of steel. The right don't get you, then the left one will. You load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. Say, Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.
Albert Einstein said the following: 100 times every day, I remind myself that my inner and outer life depend on the labors of other men, living and dead, and that I must exert myself in order to give the same measures as I have received and am still receiving. Today, I'd like to share with you the origins of Labor Day, labor events, especially the Haymarket Affair, and examples of labor activists. Labor Day is the first Monday in September, is a creation of the labor movement, dedicated to the social and economic achievements of American workers. It constitutes a national tribute to the contributions workers have made to the strength, prosperity, and well-being of our country. The first Labor Day holiday was celebrated on Tuesday, September 5th, 1882 in New York City, in accordance with the plans of the Central Labor Union. The Central Labor Union held its second Labor Day the following year. By 1894, 23 more states had adopted the holiday, and on June 28, 1894, President Grover Cleveland signed a law making the first Monday in September of each year a national holiday. And part of that was to pacify the union activists. Now, there are many strikes and there are many historical references for what we understand are labor uprisings, strikes, and so forth and so on, to move equality in working conditions. One famous one was the Pullman strike, which was interesting, and that was in 1894. But I'm going to focus on the Haymarket Affair. The circumstances were this. There was a long depression after the Civil War. Chicago was a major industrial hub where people earned $1.50 a day. $1.50 a day. It was mostly inhabited by the workers who were German or Bohemian. They worked 60 hours on a 6-day work week. At the time, there were anti-labor measures, firings, blacklisting, thugs, spies, security forces, and these were not only done by the owners and the businessmen, but supported by the major news media. In 1882 to 1886, Knights of Labor supported the 8-hour day, and protests grew from 70 to 700,000 people. Their motto was 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will. And there were demonstrations and strikes from New York City, Detroit, to Chicago. There was a labor demonstration in Chicago called the Haymarket Square Riot or Affair, and it was held on May 4th, 1886. The day after, police killed one and injured several workers. Now, there were about 200 people in the crowd. It was a peaceful demonstration, and the union leaders said so. There were 3 speakers on that day, and the last speaker took about 20 minutes. It was so peaceful that the mayor stopped by and saw that it was peaceful, so he went home. After the last speaker, the police who were standing off to the side arrived en masse and started to intimidate the crowd, which had started to disperse because of the weather. What happened next is that a homemade bomb with a brittle metal casing was thrown into the crowd of advancing police. It sputtered, and then it killed one policeman and then 6 other officers. What erupted was an exchange of gunshots. In less than 5 minutes, the square was empty. The Chicago Tribune said, a very large number of police were wounded by each other's revolvers. It was every man for himself, and while some 2 or 3 squares away, the rest emptied their revolvers, mainly into each other. In all, 7 policemen and at least 4 workers were killed. About 60 policemen were wounded in the incident. The Chicago Herald described the scene as wild carnage and estimated at least 50 dead or wounded civilians laying in the street. The Haymarket Affair is generally considered significant as the origin of the International Workers' Day. My third point is to just recognize in no particular order the activists and labor leaders that have been instrumental in the history of the labor movement. Barack Obama said, "It was the labor movement that helped secure so much of what we take for granted today. The 40-hour work week, the minimum wage, health insurance, family leave, Social Security, and Medicare." Dolores Huerta was a co-founder of the United Farm Workers with Chavez, organized the grape boycott in 1968-69, then the lettuce and Gallo wine strikes. She joined the feminist movement and worked with Gloria Steinem. She is quoted as saying, "Every moment is an organizing opportunity. Every person, a potential activist. Every minute, a chance to change the world." Samuel Gompers, at 14, became a cigar makers union activist who was president of the American Federation of Labor from 1886 to 1924. He is quoted, "If there were enough windows, we had sufficient light for our work," that's making cigars. "If not, it was apparently no concern of the management." John L. Lewis, best known as an energetic, bold, and aggressive labor leader in coal mining. Walter Reuther was president of the Auto Workers Union for 23 years, with 3 attempts made on his life. He is quoted, "You have to make up your mind whether you are willing to accept things as they are or whether you are willing to try to change them." Tom Mann published a pamphlet for an 8-hour workday. He founded the 8-Hour League, which persuaded the Trade Union Congress to adopt it as their priority. Hattie Candy, a labor activist in Las Vegas, who led a 75-day strike of casino workers for better conditions and health insurance. She became president of the union, Las Vegas Hotel and Culinary Workers Union 226, and that led to the longest strike of 550 workers at the New Frontier Hotel for 6.5 years. Leon E. Bates, Sr., organized labor at Briggs Manufacturing in Detroit and signed collective bargaining for the largest employer of Black Americans. Pauline Newman, first woman organizer of the International Ladies Garment Worker Union. 20,000 struck in 1909. Her quote, "All we knew was the bitter fact that after working 70 or 80 hours in a 7-day week. We did not earn enough to keep body and soul together. She founded the Union Health Center in New York City. Lucille Gonzalez Parsons from the 19th century, described by others as more dangerous than 1,000 rioters, was a co-founder of the International Workers of the World Union. Lastly, Mother Jones led strikes for Union Mine Workers Union. In 1903, she led the Children's Crusade, the march of children mine workers from Philadelphia to President Theodore Roosevelt's home in Oyster Bay, New York. Well, I've talked to you about the origins of Labor Day. I've reminded you of the Haymarket affair, and I've shared with you persons of activism. I'd like to close with To Be Use or Use by Margot Piercy. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who stand in the line and haul in their places, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire put out. The work of the world is common as mud, botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greet amphoras for wine or oil. Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry and a person for work that is real.
We can gather the few of us here. On together. Come. Come around. Labor songs are not meant to be sung solo. And they're a lot of work. All right, so. You out there in virtual land, your part is very easy. It's which side are you on 4 times. Which side are you on? 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 Come, those in back, come. I mean, we're talking about people who, dodge bullets and were beaten senseless. I think we can gather together here peacefully. All right, ready, come. All of you good workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old Union is coming here to dwell. Which side are you on? 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 My daddy was a miner, and I'm a miner's son. I'll stick with the Union till every battle's won. Which side are you on? 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 Oh, workers, can you stand it? Tell me how you can. Will you be a lousy scab, or will you be a man? Which side are you on? 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 Don't be a scab yourself. Don't listen to their lies. As poor folks have to got a chance unless we organize. Yes, which side are you on? 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 Thank you, workers.
Now is the time in our service where we have the opportunity to share our bounty with each other. Your generosity, whether it's big or small, makes a difference. Since we're not physically together to pass the basket, we can so do virtually by texting 73256, putting UUFNN in the message box and hit send. Then follow the instructions to provide your offering. You can also mail a check to the office at 780 Del Monte Lane, Reno, 89511. The most convenient way to donate is to sign up for automatic giving. Please contact the office and Carol will send you an automatic draft authorization form. Our Share the Plate recipient for September is the Great Basin Outdoor School. The UUFNN has selected GBOS in the past and has followed its work and success for many years. We've been impressed by their mission and their place in our community in changing the lives of our youngest citizens. GBOS immerses students in multi-day overnight science camps and day field studies and local natural settings. Students hike, snowshoe, learn local ecology with hands-on activities, and volunteer to work with conservation projects. Lessons build healthy habits, social and academic skills, and a connection to the community and the natural world. Results from participation find that the children are more excited about science, gain a sense of connection with the natural world, and feel responsible to be good stewards for our fragile planet. Teachers receive STEM training and professional development credit. During the pandemic, it has provided additional family activities since schools were limited in offering field trips. Over 1,000 participants are involved each year. Our support can fund participation of children who might not otherwise be able to afford this experience. Thank you for your generous donation. So may you, with your donation, express the love and compassion that is part of the UUFNN. And so let the offering begin.
Our musical interlude will be one more classic labor song from the 1930s. It was very appropriate for when we're making donations. They used to tell me I was building a dream, a peace and glory ahead. And now I'm standing here in line, just waiting for bread. Once I built a railroad, I made it run, I made it race against time. Once I built a railroad, and now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime? built a tower way up to the sun of bricks and mortar and lime. Once I built a tower, and now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime? Once in khaki suits, gee, we looked swell, full of that Yankee doodly-dum. A half-a-billion boots with slogging through hell, and I was the kid with the drum. I don't remember, you called me Al. It was Al all the time. Say, don't you remember, I was your pal. Brother, can you spare a dime?
This offering to the work of this fellowship, which is helping more people grow in love, faith, justice, and joy. We dedicate ourselves, and these are offerings.
Thank you, Bob, for the offering and the first reflection. We now pick up in the 1980s, when the election of Ronald Reagan and the systematic, if deceit-filled destruction of the New Deal with its balanced regulation of capitalism and respect for workers' rights. The groundwork for this assault was actually laid a decade earlier by Lewis Powell, who published his infamous memo in 1971 outlining his strategy for corporations to retake all economic and political power, which led to an era of slashing taxes on the rich, shedding the safety net, decimating unions, driving college students into extreme debt to keep them compliant, and declaring a war on civil rights by calling it a war on drugs, building a national prison industrial complex, then packing it with millions of Black and brown people. If you don't know the Powell memo, Google it. All this did not happen by itself. Powell was rewarded for his Machiavellian strategy by then President Nixon, who appointed him to the Supreme Court. There, in 1978, in Buckley v. Vallejo, in a 5-4 decision, he created out of thin air, as an unwritten constitutional fact, the myth that money is political free speech. This set the stage for the Reagan Revolution. All revolutions involve treachery, and Reagan's was no different. He had secretly negotiated with the Iranians to continue holding the embassy hostages through the election to humiliate and defeat President Carter, an act of treason. And he also had disingenuously garnered the support of unions, particularly PATCO, the Air Traffic Controllers Union, with promises he had no intention of fulfilling. He won. Unions lost. In 1981, He fired the striking air controllers, PATCO, and PATCO crashed and burned, and with it, the union movement in America began to collapse like a row of dominoes, going from nearly 24%, nearly a quarter, of workers in 1980 to less than 11% today. As unions declined, their influence on public policy declined with it. Formerly a bedrock of the Democratic Party, by the 1990s, unions had become so decimated that President Clinton went begging to Wall Street to make up the difference. They gladly stepped in, and with their new money and new demands, led to him signing labor's death warrant, the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, in 1994, followed by the World Trade Organization, or WTO, in 1995. The final blow came when China joined the WTO in 2001, leading to the devastating loss of more than 70,000 factories. 70,000 factories that pulled up stakes and moved overseas, taking with them nearly 4 million American jobs, mostly high-wage manufacturing jobs. Workers, particularly factory workers with a high school education or less, were tossed aside in droves to fend for themselves, while the political establishment turned its attention to supporting the highly educated knowledge workers and tech entrepreneurs who migrated to the coast, driving real estate into the stratosphere and the remaining multitudes of everyday workers onto the streets as homeless castaways. And in the industrial heartland, now the Rust Belt, they descended into despondency and medically prescribed addictions. This was not a happy, prosperous outcome for them, and we all saw how it turned out in 2016. Meanwhile, many of these new knowledge workers have been busy perfecting robotics and AI, ensuring that millions of former factory workers will never regain their footing in the economy, and many who remain will fall into economic oblivion. What can be done? Clearly, the new tech behemoths like Amazon or ubiquitous food purveyors like McDonald's and Starbucks are obvious targets for unionization. As always, these mega corporations are fighting back ruthlessly with their enormous armories of cash, influence, and dirty tricks. And if not winning outright, then battling unions to a bloody draw. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. But this shop-worn strategy assumes that we are still living in the last century, refighting the last wars. In the intervening years, life on Earth has fundamentally changed. The union battles of the previous era were in alignment with the cultural myth of endless prosperity and consumption, with labor demanding a larger, more equitable percentage of the spoils and getting them. But that economic paradigm has brought us literally to the edge of an existential abyss. The climate crisis it inadvertently created is about to overwhelm and destroy it and all of us with it. And it and us are currently not responding realistically, if at all, to this crisis of our own making. Suddenly, virtually overnight, we need a new economic paradigm of sustainability for labor, for production, for consumption, for regeneration, a new circular economy focused on quality of life, not quantity of stuff, grace, not gluttony. We need a fundamental transformation in our relationship to the earth and to each other. And we need it fast. We are at the final tipping point for climate action. 10 more years at our current rate of annually increasing fossil fuel consumption without a fundamental change in our beliefs and behaviors, it's game over for climate stability. Look around. Without a profound change, what you see will only get worse until it spins irreversibly out of control. Endless wildfires, droughts, severe water shortages, unstable agriculture, food insecurity, a decimated economy, civilization on the verge of collapse, a spiraling nightmare of ever increasing desperation and despair. We can stop this from happening. It's not inevitable. To do that, we need to create a new vision of labor in a new vision of an economy that has winners and winners. Work needs to be helpful to the planet and the people, not destructive and exploitive. The people, the workers, need to awaken to the climate crisis and stand en masse in the way of nihilistic corporations that block all the doorways to change. So this Labor Day, let's not just honor those countless courageous men and women from the past who stood up against the dark forces in their time that remorselessly murdered miners and factory workers, but the current dark forces of today remorselessly killing our planet and holding us back from an economic and spiritual transformation with deceit and division. This action will force many of us out of our comfort zones. But just think about it. How many people in history have had the luxury of possessing a comfort zone in the first place? 19th century factory workers, 18th century miners, 10th century serfs, Egyptian slaves building the pyramids. Anyone think they had comfort zones? And what makes us think that the one we enjoy now will exist forever? Truth is, if we don't willingly step out of our comfort zone today as workers and as citizens, it will be forever ripped away from us tomorrow. But do not despair. Act now. We can do this. Workers of the world, unite for life. Write and call Congress. Find a climate group and join it. Engage with your family and friends. Reach out. Send a check. Just do something. When you look at the previous unwinnable battles that we as workers have won, it is possible. We can do this. After all, it's up to me and it's up to you.
We can change if we want to. We can change if we want to. We can change if we want to. It's up to me and it's up to you. Titans churn and fires blaze. Shakes our faith in coming days. There are things that we can do. It's up to me, it's up to you. Dark days now are here. Dark days now are here. There is much to fear. There is much to fear. Systems breaking down. Systems breaking down. Apathy abounds. Apathy abounds. Yet we can take a stand. We can take a stand. Stand up and demand. Stand up and demand. Change without delay. Change without delay. To thrive a new way. To thrive a new way. Yes, we can change. We can change if we want to. If we want to. Be the change. Be the change if we want to. If we want to. Lead the change. Lead the change if we want to. If we want to. It's up to me and it's up to you. We can win. We can win if we want to. If we want to. Start again. Start again if we want to. If we want to. Go all in. Go all in if we want to. If we want to. It's up to me and it's up to you. It's up to me and it's up to you. It's up to me and it's up to you.
At this time, can we join together in prayer and meditation? At this time, I want you to consider the difficulties in our world, the fires, the floods, the earthquakes, the war, the lives lost. But I'd also like you to reflect on the rejoicing of blessings, of support and survival, where neighbors help neighbors, where we as a UU community give service and love. It is time to share your joys, your concerns, and your sorrows in the chat box if you so choose. Please take this time to reflect on our world beyond and within yourselves, and to reflect on the labor of this time. And so be it. Amen.
Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time with UUFNN, you can learn more about connecting with us here. It's on your screen, uufnn.org/online-connections. To receive our weekly email and other updates from UUFNN, click on the link in our contact card in the middle of the page. If you need help with Zoom or other support, or know of someone who does, or know of anyone feeling isolated who may need connection, contact Carol Sorensen at office@uufnn.org. Please stay online to join our informal virtual coffee hour. You'll see an invitation appear on your screen to join a breakout room with groups of 6-8 people. If during coffee hour you need help or support, or you have questions, please press the help button in your breakout room. And now, Bill Quinby and I will lead us in our closing song, number 1018, Come and Go With Me to That Land.
Will you please join with me in solidarity with your hand on your heart and your hand raised? Let's reflect, if we can, on we labor in love. We join together to create work that blesses us all people and the planet. This Labor Day and all Labor Days to come, may our work and all work serve humanity and all living things. Please watch for emails to bring us together creatively. As we end our service, may we find joy in our lives. May we give joy to others, and may we labor in joy. Blessed be. Amen and namaste.